Deb Harlan had been office manager at Holt Property Group for 11 years, and she knew a lost cause when she saw one. She saw one on a Saturday morning in March, when Maren Holt, 31 years old, the company's CEO by inheritance and by stubbornness, sat alone in the boardroom of the estate that bore her family's name, surrounded by 3 failed inspection reports and a chandelier that hadn't lit since her mother's last board dinner. The city's fire marshal had given her 60 days. 2 licensed crews had walked out citing code violations they couldn't trace. A third had billed $14,000 and left the same mess. Deb had quietly begun updating her resume. Then the temp service sent over Cal Brewer. He arrived at 8:15 with a tool bag over one shoulder and a 7-year-old girl riding his opposite hip. The girl had pigtails and a backpack shaped like a frog, and she was eating a granola bar with the focused efficiency of someone who had learned not to slow her father down. "Sorry, school's closed for a teacher day," Cal said at the door. He set his daughter down and looked at Deb with steady gray eyes. "She'll sit quiet. She's good at that." The girl looked up at Deb. "I have colored pencils," she said, as if this settled the matter. Deb stepped aside. She told herself it was because Maren had approved the call and there was no one else. She did not examine the look on the child's face too closely, that frank, unworried look that said the world had always been navigable as long as her father was in it. Cal walked the building before he touched a single panel. He moved through the east corridor with a flashlight and a folded schematic, stopping at junctions, crouching to read junction labels, saying nothing. Nora followed 3 steps behind him with her colored pencils, accepted without negotiation a folding table in the main hall, and began drawing what appeared to be a very large horse. Deb watched from the hallway. She had learned in 11 years to watch. Maren came out of the boardroom at 9:30 with a coffee she hadn't finished and the look she got when she'd been reading the same sentence 6 times. She glanced at the child at the folding table. The child glanced back. "Hi," said Nora. "Are you the lady who owns the lights?" Maren looked at Deb. Deb looked at the ceiling. "The building, sort of," Maren said. "The lights aren't really working." "Dad's going to fix them." Nora selected a brown pencil and returned to her horse. "He fixes things. That's his whole job." Maren stood there a moment, then went back to her reports. Cal found the fault at 11:17. Deb heard him from the hallway, not shouting, not triumphant, just a low sound, almost amused, the sound a man makes when a puzzle yields. She came to the panel room doorway. He was crouched in front of an open subpanel in the east corridor, the original 1974 installation, with a code reference pulled up on his phone beside a hand-traced diagram he'd made himself. "3 crews missed it," he said, not to Deb but as a plain statement of fact, because none of them had the pre-78 amendment in front of them. The estate's on a grandfather clause that requires the original load path sequence, not the current one. Everybody rewired to the current standard and tripped the override. He tapped a line on his diagram. "It's in the amendment appendix, section 4J. Deb looked at the phone screen. The amendment appendix opened to a header, and below the header in the acknowledgments, 2 lines. Revisions to load path sequencing protocol contributed by Calvin R. Brewer, certified master electrician, State Board of Electrical Examiners. His name was on the standard that 3 crews hadn't read. She thought about asking how that had happened, how a man who came in through a temp service on a Saturday with a child and a frog backpack had written the section of code that certified electricians were skipping. She didn't ask. Some things you just watched. Cal had the panels corrected and the sequence restored by 1:15 noon. He sent Deb a text, *ready when she wants to see it, because Maren had gone back to the boardroom and he hadn't wanted to interrupt. It was Nora who interrupted. The girl had finished her horse and packed her pencils and walked herself to the boardroom door with the self-possession of someone 3 times her age. She knocked twice, small knuckles, and when Maren opened it, Nora looked up at her and said, "Dad fixed the lights. Do you want to come see? They're the kind that hang down really far." Marin looked past the child to the hallway. Cal was at the far end, tool bag at his side, waiting in that still way he had, not pushy, not impatient, just present. Like a man who had learned that things moved in their own time and that rushing them changed nothing. Marin followed the child. The chandelier in the main hall was 12 feet across, wrought iron and amber glass, original to the 1910 construction. For 2 years it had hung dark. When Cal threw the sequence and the hall lights came up in their proper order, the chandelier caught and held the morning light coming through the east windows, and the whole room went the color of late afternoon in October, warm and amber and settled, like something long interrupted finally finishing its sentence. Marin stood in the middle of the hall and didn't say anything for a moment. Nora stood beside her and looked up at the light. "It's like the inside of a jar," she said. "It is," Marin said. She looked at Cal. "How did everyone else miss it?" "They read the current code," he said. "This building's older than the current code." She was quiet. Then, "Your name is in the acknowledgments." "I sat on the amendment committee for 2 years. He picked up his tool bag. "Long time ago." Deb from the hallway watched Marin Holt, who had held a failing estate together for 14 months by force of will and hadn't shown any of it on her face, look at this man for the first time like she was actually seeing him. Not the temp service call, not the grease on his collar, him. Nora tugged on Marin's sleeve. "We're going to the diner across the street. They have grilled cheese. You could come." She said it the way children say things that are simply true and obvious, with no awareness that the invitation might be refused. "Dad says grilled cheese is better than fancy sandwiches because it's honest." Marin smiled, the real kind, the one that happened before she could arrange her face. She looked at Cal. Cal looked back at her with the same steady gray eyes he'd had at the door. "You're welcome to," he said. "No obligation." Deb thought, she'll say no. She's the CEO of a company in a building crisis on a Saturday, and she'll say no, and they'll go eat their grilled cheese and come back Monday to sign the paperwork, and that will be the end of it. Marin pulled on her coat. The diner across the street had 4 booths and a counter, and a piece of pie under a glass dome that rotated slowly for no apparent reason. Nora ordered grilled cheese, and then asked Marin if she'd ever named a horse, and the conversation moved from there in the sideways way children's conversations do, unhurried, specific, full of facts Nora considered important. Marin answered every question with the same attention she'd have given a board member, and Nora approved of this. At some point, while Marin was telling a story about a horse she'd ridden once as a child, Nora leaned against Cal's arm and looked at him the way children look when they are deciding something. Then she said, quietly, almost to herself, "She's nice, like you said Mom was." The diner went on around them. The pie rotated. Marin's hand was on the table and she went still, not stricken, just still, the way you go still when something lands exactly where you didn't expect it. Cal said softly, "Nora." A whole sentence in one word, gentle, not correcting. "It's okay," Marin said. She looked at the child. "I'm sorry about your mom." "She died when I was 3, Nora said. "I don't remember her face, but Dad has pictures." She picked up her grilled cheese. "He talks about her so I know what she was like. He's good at that." Marin looked at Cal. He met her eyes and didn't look away and didn't fill the space with words. That was the moment, Deb decided later, though she hadn't been there. She pieced it together from the way Marin came back to the office Monday with a different quality of quiet, not the burdened quiet of 14 months of holding things together, but a lighter kind. The kind that happens when something you'd stopped expecting shows up anyway. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon, Marin drove to the address on Cal's service contract. It was a rented house on a side street, a single-story place with a clean porch and a basketball hoop, and a frog backpack hanging on the doorknob. She had a folder under her arm, the permanent facilities contract for Holt House, 2-year term, full scope of electrical and systems maintenance, the rate she'd pay any senior contractor in the city. She had also, without entirely intending to, brought the estate's spare key set. The brass ring held 4 keys, one for each entrance of the old building, and she had told herself on the drive over that she was dropping them off as a matter of practical access for the new contract. She had told herself this several times. Cal answered the door in a work shirt with the sleeves rolled back. Nora appeared at his elbow. "You came back," Nora said, and smiled the smile of someone whose prediction had been quietly confirmed. Marin handed Cal the folder. He looked through it unhurried, reading every page the way a careful man reads things, and when he looked up, she held out the key ring. "Practical access," she said. He took the keys. He looked at them in his palm for a moment. "For the contract," she said. "Right," he said. She was already smiling when she said it. He saw that. Nora looked between them with the serene patience of a child who has already decided how things will go and is simply waiting for the adults to catch up. Deb was parked at the end of the block. She told herself it was because she'd given Marin a ride and was waiting. She did not examine this claim closely, and she watched the 3 of them on the lit porch, the amber light falling across the clean boards, the frog backpack on the hook, the key ring in his hand. She thought about the chandelier. Warm and amber and settled, like something long interrupted, finally finishing its sentence. She put the car in drive and let them have the evening.